In Governor Pritzker's recent budget address, he made a brief, seemingly off-the-cuff reference to the former Speaker of the House without mentioning Michael Madigan by name.
Last week, our federal courts returned a verdict rightfully condemning the once unchecked power of a former Speaker of this House. Now, if you applauded that decision like I did, then I expect you to defend and applaud those same federal courts as they check this president in his quest for unrestrained power.
Joining me today is Jeremy Gorner, a beat reporter for the Chicago Tribune's Metro staff who covers Illinois state government from the State House in Springfield. Now, I'll just say before we get started, if you're interested in a deeper dive into Governor Pritzker's budget address, check out the link that I'll put in the show notes to hear Jeremy's recent appearance on Springfield Morning News on 92.7 WMAY. Jeremy, thanks for sitting down with me again today.
Always a pleasure, Cole. Hope all's well.
Yeah, all's well on my end. Likewise, hope all is well on your end.
Mm-hmm.
What's been the reaction at the Capitol following Madigan's conviction?
Well, I think everyone's just moving on. I mean, it's starting to gear up to be a busy time of year at the Capitol, especially with the governor making his budget address, which, one of my veteran colleagues, called, this governor's budget address and State of the State address probably the most interesting he's seen in decades. And it also indicates that there's a lot of work to do for the governor and lawmakers in terms of, there could be, programs that are cut, particularly immigrant health care and other programs. And, the goal is to not raise taxes on regular people. And this comes in the face of trying to trim what had originally been projected as a $3.2 billion deficit that the state faces going into the upcoming fiscal year. And on top of that, you have the governor who has really been, out of all the Democratic leaders in the country, has really taken a strong stance against President Donald Trump. I mean, say what you will about Governor Pritzker, some say that this could be a preview of what's to come. Is he going to run for a third term as governor or is he going to run for president in 2028? We'll see. I mean, this could be the early stages of that. But my point in saying all this, Cole, is that with Mike Madigan, everything I just told you, I think is an indication that people have really just kind of started to move on because of this. Because after the governor makes a speech like he did last week, it's really like lawmakers, lobbyists, and the governor's office, are going to be focusing on getting to work between now and May to craft a final budget that's balanced. And it's going to be a crucial test for the governor and for the Democrats. They don't want to be seen as as overspending and raising taxes, and they're going to be really careful on this budget. And so it seems like but at the same time, there's also going to be a lot of interests who are going to want to have their programs that are going to be part of this budget. And the governor has warned them that has warned fellow Democrats that if you have a program that you want, you got to be prepared to offer a solution on what to cut. So I guess the point is that, the Democrats that control, both the supermajorities in both chambers of the General Assembly and the governor's office and lobbyists, they're all going to have their work cut out for them in the next several months to even worry about Mike Madigan and just kind of focus on, the tasks at hand.
Yeah. And, I want to get back to your article a little bit more in depth, but just a brief tangent. I noticed and I'll have the article linked in the show notes if folks want to read at the Chicago Tribune. I noticed your article opened by briefly mentioning the pardon of Rod Blagojevich. To your knowledge, has Governor Pritzker made at least a loose reference to that at all? And any comments on that?
He has not. No. No, that's the interesting thing is that, there were, it's interesting, Cole, keep in mind that, when all this came down with the pardon of former Governor Blagojevich, the governor didn't, from what I recall, didn't have media availabilities that were scheduled, in the ensuing days. Now, is it because of Blagojevich? I don't know. I mean, I know that a lot of naysayers of the governor would probably want to think that, but that could be for any reason,
Right.
But why he wasn't around to talk to the media, but that would have certainly been the opportunity to ask him about Blago,
Yeah.
especially because of the infamous recording of the former governor before he was governor on one of the FBI tapes, with Blagojevich when he was under investigation, years and years ago. But let's look at what happened that week. I mean, it was a busy news week. I mean, you had Blagojevich getting pardoned, you had Mike Madigan getting convicted, and then behind the scenes, the governor is all busy guy. He's preparing for his budget and state of the state address. So, not trying to excuse, any opportunities why I wouldn't be around to answer, questions about Rob Blagojevich, but there's just a lot of stuff going on. So when he's in front of the cameras again, chances are everybody's kind of moved on and are focusing on the issues of the day. And the issue, last week when we were a week since the Blagojevich pardon, everybody was focusing on the budget and, what's going to happen for Illinois' fiscal future. But, that was the issue of the day for reporters and for the governor. And that's what we and the media and everyone else had kind of focused on.
Yeah. And, I bring that up because one thing that one of your colleagues brought up, Ray Long, said that, one of the things that was not mentioned in the budget address, and maybe this will get us back to your story that you wrote, was any call for ethics reform. And
sure.
Again, back to your point, I think you kind of made it. Some people, maybe like you say, naysayers have speculated that maybe the governor hasn't made comment on this because it kind of may reflect bad on him with regard to ethics reform, But like I say, back to that, no mention of ethics reform in the budget address. But as you reported, the GOP is calling, and some others are calling for greater state ethics reforms.
Yeah, I mean, they passed some ethics reforms in the last couple of years,
right.
But nothing that good government groups are satisfied with. I mean, there's arguments to be made that that a lot more could be done, with respect to ethics reform. Particularly, like in one case, for example, maybe extending the period of time from when one leaves office to become a lobbyist and lobby. That's that same unit of government. I mean, that's just one example. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, when you ask lawmakers, what are you going to do about ethics reform? It's really hard to get clear answers. I think, a lot of folks here, concede that there have been strides made in the last couple of years, but like any issue under the dome, it isn't good enough. And it's an issue that we're going to keep working, hard at. But nobody has really given any concrete, next steps on where do we go from here with regards to ethics reform. That being said, there's been several bills that have been introduced this year already, I believe related to lobbying and other ethics related measures. But, whether they go anywhere remains to be seen.
Gotcha. And yeah, we'll round out this conversation here in a moment, but I just I always try to give, a plug for the great work you're doing you and the team are doing over at the Chicago Tribune. Speaking of ethics reforms, you've got the Chicago Tribune has a great series on the culture of corruption in Illinois. And to your point, what this series details is some other measures that might strengthen the ethics laws in Illinois. So I want to encourage everybody to check that out. To round this out, tell us, what are some of the perspectives, or anything notable that you heard following the, well, first of all, I don't know if we made it clear, but he was charged with some things. He wasn't charged with others. I believe that's detailed in your article.
Yeah. So a federal jury convicted you're talking about Mike Madigan.
Correct. Yep. Mike Madigan.
Yeah, he was convicted of 10 of nearly 24 charges that were lodged against him. So among the charges, I mean, the big charge that he was acquitted on was racketeering, which basically calls for prosecutors to establish that the target of their investigation is, operating, in this context, a public corruption case, is using their elected office to run as a criminal enterprise. And That was the big count. That was the big allegation against Madigan, and he was acquitted of that. However, he was convicted on charges that he helped Commonwealth Edison pass its legislative agenda in Springfield in exchange for the utility hiring his allies for jobs that required little or no work. And, again, but not under the guise of it being, of those efforts being under the, a criminal enterprise, obviously. And he was also, Madigan was also convicted on some charges stemming from an unsuccessful effort to get Governor Pritzker to appoint former Chicago Alderman Danny Solis, who was an FBI informant in this case, or federal informant in this case, to a high-paying state board in exchange for Solis steering clients to Madigan's private law firm. So there were some bribery counts, obviously, that were that he was convicted on, or bribery conspiracy, I believe it was. But clearly, he had more than 20 counts that were, that he had faced. And still, 10 guilty counts is pretty significant.
Yeah. One of the things I found notable in your reporting, to close out the show, they said, I believe it was Spain, I believe that said this.
Ryan Spain. Yes.
Yeah, he said, our House chamber still operates under the Madigan way. The rules of the House were written by Mike Madigan. I didn't realize that nothing really had changed with regard to the rules.
Yeah, I'd have to go in specific to see, exactly which rules that, he's talking about. That's kind of like, there's always, House rules, rules that the House and Senate establish.
For example, like we talked about a few weeks ago, there was the idea of the 60 vote rule. Is that
that's something that you really see with Speaker Welch, because under Madigan, the Democrats had majorities, but they didn't have as big of a supermajority as they do under Speaker Welch. The thing about, that's always been kind of a drumbeat, is that whatever House rules are implemented by the majority party, the minority party, in this case, the Republicans, are going to have something to say about it. The big House rule that a big change to the House rules came a couple of years ago when there were term limits set on the Speaker of the House, which I believe is 10 years. That was not changed, when it came to the new House rules. And I remember, and I'm glad you brought this up, because I know that Ryan Spain's position has been the position of the GOP, but I've pressed the GOP to give me examples of, what House rules are there under, that existed under Madigan are an impediment or haven't changed. And I have not gotten an answer to that, really. There could be rules under Madigan that were in place, that are still in place today. How consequential they are, I haven't gotten a lot of clarity on that. But what you saw in the story was a position that Ryan Spain still shares, nonetheless, among Republicans, and his position is his position. But again, the big thing, and I was talking to my colleagues about this again, is, when they passed the House rules, when session started in the last month, did they take away that term limit requirement on Speaker of the House, which is a new thing under Speaker Welch? And the answer is no. Had they done that, that would have been a big story. I think then you would have really seen a chorus of things haven't changed, since Madigan left, and et cetera.
Right. Well, before we go, any other notable thoughts, reactions that you captured just following this indictment? I know, like you said, people kind of moved on, but just anything else notable you wanted to share before we go?
I think it is going to be interesting to see what happens by way of ethics reform. Like I said, going full circle when we started the show, everybody's just kind of moved on and is resigned to the fact that Mike Madigan is not here anymore, and in Springfield, and that it's a new day with him not being here. Depending on, of course, you have a lot of Republicans who are cynical about that, but the reality is that people are moving on. But that being said, it seems clear that Democrats are talking a big game, like Pritzker in his budget and State of the State address, by alluding to Madigan, without naming him, in his speech. I think it would make you wonder, okay, well, are there going to be any ethics laws that are going to be strengthened because of that? And there's been a lot of resistance so far. You have Democrats who say, they want to take ethics reform seriously, but there's nothing concrete that, that we've seen we've seen some stuff in the last couple of years, but again, people who pay attention to this closely say it's not good enough. So it's going to be, I think it remains to be seen in light of this Madigan conviction, whether we're going to see even more changes by way of ethics reform.
Yeah. And, just another plug, maybe if representatives are mulling around what they could do, where to begin, check out that series on the culture of corruption from Chicago Tribune. I think there's a lot of good starter ideas that could strengthen our ethics reforms. And I guess just a last thought, I'm sure you got this prepared speech. Like I said in my intro, this remark to Madigan was off the cuff. Am I wrong on that? It was not a prepared, or at least like in the speech I heard, it wasn't a prepared remark. Are you at all privy to that? I think I heard of that on WMAY, so it's not something I had read from you.
Not that I know of. It's funny. I was just trying to do a search to see if I could find it, because we get the speech, mailed or emailed to us, probably like when the governor is a few minutes in. And I have not been able to find it. Thus, I couldn't tell you one way or the other without looking at the speech. But no, I was trying to very quickly find it if I could. I can find it. It'll just take a minute.
I figure it's good we at least address that, since I did say that in my intro. I want to make sure I was accurate.
Right. Yeah, I just did a Control F for speaker, and I do not see it in here.
Yeah.
So I guess all I can say, Cole, is that in the copy of the advanced copy of the speech that we got, and I wouldn't even say it's an advanced copy. It was in the speech that we got, the media, as the governor began his remarks in the House. I do not see a reference to the former House Speaker Madigan, either by name or not by name. Now, maybe there's another version the governor had that we don't know about, but I don't see it in my version that I have.
Yeah. Like you say, that is totally possible. I appreciate you looking that up just to make sure that at least that what I had heard on WMAY was, the copy that the media had received did not include that loose mention, and so you were able to just confirm that, like you say. And just I want to reiterate what you said. It's possible that they had a last minute draft or something that they didn't send to you. I always want to give people benefit of the doubt on that.
Sure.
So. Cool. Well, Jeremy, I just want to thank you again for the work that you and the team do. Like I say, I'll say it for the third time, please check out the show notes. I'll have the Culture of Corruption series linked. I really hope that this is something that we can address in the state of Illinois going forward. Jeremy, thank you.
Thanks, Cole.